Hello, everybody. Today, my name is Ben Fox, and I'm one of the producers of the CEC it's in Las Vegas, and we have it scheduled for September 8 and 9 of 2020, and for now. So we'll see how that pans out. And my guest today is Mr. John English, and I'm going to let him give you a little bit of background about himself, and then we'll get going.
Hi, Ben. Hi, everybody. If you're seeing this, we made it to the show, so that's a good thing. A little background about myself here. I've been in the gaming business 35 years, and proud to say I've been with CEC since day one, and excited to have everybody at the show and to be doing this yet again. Coming out of this time right now, it's a very unique time for gaming and for esports in general to see all the growth and excitement that's been surrounded around this new phenomenon. I guess it's not exactly a new phenomenon, but we're a captive audience now. And so things have really taken off. And now that we have the show and everybody's here, I think we get some really great things to discuss from A to Z.
Okay, so let's hit going. John and I have talked many times about applications of esports in the casino environment, coming from the sports side and integrating esports. This is something that we've been discussing for quite some time, but now it's even more relevant. It seems like it really is the buzz because it, like John mentioned, it is something that in this environment, it's primary. So even going forward in the future, based on the audience that we have, as far as the millennial audience or the group that is coming to the casino properties or engaging with them online, tends to be this gamer audience. As a matter of fact, Ari shared an article with me this morning that was mentioning the people that will be returning to the casinos immediately, and it seems like in the older crowd, which is the crowd that the casinos usually rely very, very heavily on. The data came back that it was more likely that the age groups of 25 to 35, I believe, were more apt to actually go back to the properties, as opposed to the older crowd. So I don't know what you've been hearing lately, John. Maybe you can share with us what's been happening as far as from the sports perspective, and also how esports is now stepping up and becoming center stage.
Yeah, well, it's gonna take a while, I think, Ben. Look at this. Nobody was expecting this to happen, and nobody knew what to do once it did happen, right? So, being in Las Vegas and seeing what we have to go through to reopen all the casinos, to put into standards into place, to do all the things that are necessary for social distancing and being responsible in what we'll call the new era, the new world. It's going to be very cumbersome. And it might be, it's going to take a little while, I think, for, people to figure out what's comfortable, what people are comfortable with. I mean, obviously, it'd be nice to figure out when not only will the curve flatten, but when we could come up with a vaccine and other things that people feel more comfortable with traveling and being around large crowds. I, for one, think that, taking the social environment out of a casino by putting plexiglass everywhere and by everybody wearing masks and turning it into a whole different type of environment or world is going to take a lot of the soul away from going out to the casino, going out with your friends and, having a fun Friday night. So it's going to take a while for everybody to get used to this. There's going to be a recovery period in Vegas in general, from sports books to everything in nature, from table games especially, where people are close together. And I know that there's new rules in place for distancing. I know that people are supposed to wear masks. I just don't know how people are going to adapt, and I don't know that anybody really does yet until we see. Looking at Macau as an indicator, the casinos are not filled yet. It's starting to pick up a little bit, but at this moment, as we talk, they're not overflowing on the casino floors exactly at the moment. So,
Yeah.
and then of course you add travel on top of that. And then the major issue, which is economic issues that you have to take into account. People haven't worked for a couple of months, and it's a lot of people are financially impacted, and some people are completely out of work and haven't been reemployed. So we have to look at the economic impact to the industry as well. So put all that together, I think we need some recovery time. And yes, gaming from home has had a great uptick, and on all accounts, and esports is really leading the pack.
Right. Have you, I know we talked about this in the past. Maybe you can give some people a little bit of insight of how, from the sports perspective, the live sporting events having moved to mobile and, online type of betting environment, sort of fits hand in hand with esports, which is, essentially about 90% online, maybe a little bit more depending on, the players.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean,
It's more like the crossover, like I just wanted to get into, making people feel a little bit more comfortable about the fact that the foundation is already there, and you're a very big sort of cornerstone in, having, from the time that we talked, even the ability to be able to set people with sports books and things like that. So, I just wanted to sort of educate people on the ease of entry based on what has already been established in the with the foundation of sports betting itself.
well, the good news, since this, even during the pandemic, but prior, is that Nevada and other states have really been proactive with regard to esports. Over the last few years, talking at CEC and what have you, we talked quite heavily about regulation. I think they even did a panel on regulation the last couple of years, and I'm a big proponent for a fair game, right? Look at, everybody wants a fair game, whether it's basketball, football, or esports, right? So when you're talking about betting, right? So people want a fair match, want to make sure that things are on equal standards, because with all that being said, a lot has happened over the last couple of months, and a few months, I should say, in terms of growth and things moving forward. For instance, Nevada approving certain types of esports and certain ESL league for betting on CS:GO, Call of Duty, other types of esports. That's a big step forward, and so I think that the gaming industry is adopting it here in the U.S. Slowly, cautiously, but it's good to see when you see big high bar states like Nevada, New Jersey, and now states like Pennsylvania and everybody getting involved with esports. You're seeing now you're going to see a lot of movement, I think, in that area, and that's really good. And I think that's been really something that we wanted to see, because now the regulation and the regulators are involved. We've been waiting to see that for quite some time.
Right. Currently, right now, I believe it's just Nevada and New Jersey that allow it here in the United States.
Yeah, that's true. And
as far as esports go.
And adopting it as any other bet or any other sport. But let's take a look at it. U.S. is somewhat late adopters. I'm taking a look at some of the bets that have come across different parts of Europe and other parts of the world. Esports is gaining enormously, and upwards of 200% in some jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting to see the uptick in bets. Keep in mind, there's no sports to bet on. Not to say that, and I hope this trend continues to tick upwards when sports comes back. But at the moment, there's no sports to bet on, unless, like I mentioned, Korean baseball, Taiwanese stuff, ping pong, and of course now you got some other stuff that's talking about starting up NASCAR and a few other stuff, which is very exciting. But at the moment, that's what's giving a huge push towards the esports market. So.
So currently, right now, how many states in the United States allow sports betting?
Well, sports betting right now, we just got another state again towards which is fantastic, towards the start of the pandemic, which was Virginia. My latest map, and I'll give you all the latest on all of that in just a minute. Because we just did an updated map with all of that. And if you guys want to use that or insert that, you can.
To your knowledge, right now it's 13. Of those, do you know of any that have excluded esports from future assignment? Or, I mean, I know that in the state of New Jersey, they had a decision, but they sort of included wording so that esports would be allowed. I know that Nevada, I mean, since they're already doing it, obviously they have. But the other ones that have signed up, are you aware of any of those at this time, or do you have to like check it out, or do you know that?
Yeah, I have to look into the exclusions, but none that really stand out to me. You know, it's like esports and betting on esports. I think now that Nevada, New Jersey have really started to establish some foothold, I think that a lot of states will follow.
And have any of them, are any of them states that include Native American casinos that have allowed sports betting currently?
Well, Nevada has Native American casinos. So
aside from Nevada,
yeah, none that have adopted any regulation fully around esports yet, but many that are coming to us with a lot of interest.
Okay, but they have like sovereign nation status. A lot of them, right? So I mean, it's yet to be seen.
Some have flexibility as to what they can do. Of course, everything is written with regard to what their compact is. And then, of course, you know, then we have to define what is esports. We're talking about betting on esports. We're talking about having tournaments. What is the actual format that the tribes want to have?
Well,
some states do not allow for betting on sports in their compacts whatsoever.
Well, tournaments as a whole are a totally different story. I mean, you know, it's like anything like slot tournaments or bingo or something like that, where it's not really, you're not so much betting on the players that are playing. You're more, you know, it's all about prize pools and things like that. So tournaments are sort of held differently. It's the wagering on those tournaments that you know is the thing that's in question in certain places. I mean, as far as the tournament,
from a tribal perspective, it's sports betting is something that the Ralph been progressive with. However, they have to work out negotiations on their compact with the state that they reside in.
Right. That's what
there's a lot of tribes that have expressed interest across the nation, but some have advanced, some haven't. Such as New Mexico has advanced, and California has not.
Right. So with the listing of all that have accepted sports betting, how many of those states currently have Native American casinos that can share in the sports betting, you know, offering currently?
Well, quite a few. Well, Colorado being one that stands out right out top, and then of course Washington, which has tribes,
right.
And then New York, which has quite a few tribal nations up in the New York region as well. So, you know, quite a few that stand out right off the top.
Has Connecticut come along on the sports betting?
They moved along. It's not finalized yet.
It's not done. Okay, so from the Native American perspective, if they're in a state, I believe that currently allows something, obviously it's going to be easier for them. So, you know, so depending,
they do want to work hand in hand with the state. You know,
right. So depending on the legislation in those states and how they handle their tribal casinos, they can probably, the ones that already exist, can probably opt for adding esports wagering if it hasn't been written out, which I don't think any state's going to do that at this point. It'd be insane.
I think there's more interest to have it in than out. So
Right.
I think we're looking really good. And, like I said, that it did get a very large boost over the last couple of months. Attention has increased, awareness, engagement, it's all increased in the last couple of months. So
Right. Right.
it's,
Well,
there's reasons for people to take a look now, good reason.
right. And so we've also seen the emergence of many pro teams that have esport teams as well. And I wanted to touch on that because a lot of these players, they don't just play video games online themselves, the pro players, but they sort of do it as, and I've seen this recently, as sort of to stay mentally active in whatever the sport is that they're involved. There's Madden, there's FIFA, there's NBA 2K. It's like those, I've heard many of those players just randomly play those games to sort of, they say, it's for fun, but at the same time, it's sort of like, they're staying in check with their sport, even though it's just mental. And eventually it'll also be virtual, because once we get into real VR and mixed reality and things like that, these guys are, you're going to find the current athletes, really engaged in this stuff.
Well, it's funny that, it's great that you're saying this, Ben. I've been working with a lot of groups, large influencer groups, and one just happens to be a group of football players, and they are playing. They are working heavily on the esports, trying to become gamers in the esports. It's a little easier on the skull.
Well, it's smart. It's
Yeah.
smart, and it's not too far-fetched.
It was funny listening to these guys. Oh my God. They're like so competitive. It's like every bit as competitive in the living room as they are on.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, exactly what you said. Okay. So, yes, there's, and not only that, I happen to know quite a few of them. I'm working with some of them, and it's great to see them involved at that level. They're really getting into it. Like the football players are not only playing Madden, trust me, they're playing. One of our guys is absolutely hooked on Call of Duty. So
Yeah.
he's a huge fan, and I've got several others. Aside from that, you've got all these major influencers that are getting involved in the
Right.
game space as
Right.
well. Or the gamers themselves are becoming massive influencers. You take a look at like Twitch and some of the markets that are out there, and looking at just chatting, people just sitting there chit chatting about everything that's going on in their lives. It's got an amazing amount of viewership. So, you're seeing people from all spectrums, from pros to amateurs to the pros now, just being able to sit there and talk, and they're making sizable money doing it as well.
Yeah, well, the crossover's there. And if you look at traditional forms of not just education, but also, simulation and practicing, you find a lot of the, in the military is a perfect example. Almost all people in the military now train with simulators, so, it's not out of the ordinary probably for the athletes or the teams to keep these athletes engaged. And I've seen things, in VR that physically you wouldn't, it's pretty incredible. They really are doing a lot of the same movements that they would be doing on a field, for example, in VR, in order to activate the game. It's funny you brought up they play Madden, but they also play Call of Duty. I was at GDC a year ago, and my brother and I were looking at a lot of game developers because, for us, we love them. We love to see the new games. We love to see what's coming up. And there is a game there that it was like a monster football game, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, and it was just really kind of like you could pick your character and simulate it. So it's this real, they're starting to really get into this creative crossover between the physical world and the virtual world. And, you know, as we're living through this pandemic here, that is not going to go away. I feel, I feel that even if the masks come off and, you know, people are running around hugging each other, that we're left with this difference in, you know, how we interact, even on our conferences. Most people have learned to live and work at home. You know, we may not like it, or we might want to go into the office, but it seems like people are adapting to this new form. I think it's going to be a while before we see that. I don't think that's going to go away. I think that's here to stay, pretty much.
Well, once you learn something, it doesn't, you're over that whole learning curve. Like it took a little while for me to get used to doing all of this. You know, I mean, I've done the occasional video conferencing, you know, with clients and what have you, but to do it on a regular basis, you know, been
It's good training.
a challenge at first, and now it's, you know, it's a second nature, so it's not that big of an issue whatsoever. And it has made things convenient, and obviously it's cost effective for sure,
Yeah.
and environmentally friendly, if you will. But yes, you know, a little fresh air is always good, and to go out and see people and be social, I think is
Right.
important. And you know, online gaming has its place. The entertainment of Las Vegas, I don't think is going to ever go away. I think
Yeah.
it's going to take some time for recovery. I think it's going to, like it's mentioned, I think it's going to take some time for people's wallets to recover and their
Right.
finance, and for people to get back to work. But once all that happens, I think Las Vegas will survive like it always has. I think Macau will bounce back as well as most all the gaming markets. Tribal's taking it pretty hard right now too. So you know, it really makes sense, and it makes good business case now for online gaming in general. It really does. You know, there's been a lot of pushback for online gaming with the Restoration of America's Wire Act, and other different things that have stalled the process of moving online gaming forward. You know, whether it be concerns over controlling it, or whether it be concerns over problem gambling. It hasn't taken off or manifested like we hoped it would here in the U.S., but it will, and it's starting to, and I think this gives it a good business case now.
Well, you know, I'm glad you touched on that. So why do you feel like, I mean, I know Europe, your European market has not just done, you know, traditional sports betting online, but they've also embraced esports as well. But just talking from the traditional perspective, why was there such a disparity up until this point in time, where from your perspective, the U.S. has just dragged so long behind, you know, from what we see in other places?
Well, you know, I'm not even saying at this point in time yet, Ben. I think we still got a little bit of time left to, you know, people to really figure this all out, right? Um, but you know, because now you've got captive audiences at home that are, you know, the users can't be denied, the viewership can't be denied, the fact that people are spending money, and you know, look at they're going to find their entertainment, whether it's at home. We found that out with sports betting. We found that out with online gaming. That, you know, people will find their product wherever they whatever they want to do. So when we had prohibition of sports betting, it obviously drove people offshore. We're now showing a lot of success in sports betting in the U.S. So it's showing that the market is growing, and that we're winning back. And if not winning back, we're at least growing the sector of sports betting in general. I think that you know, for one here, you know, look at we've got a ways to go when we talk about embracing all forms of sports betting across a nationwide network. We got probably another 2 or 3 years of growth there, 4 years maybe of states figuring out how to make it work for them, figuring out how to get it positioned and to have everything monitored. In the meantime, each state will decide whether they're going to have mobile, whether they're going to have online. Each one operates independently, each state. So there's no federal law, whereas Europe is a wide open atmosphere. There's no Wire Act defining that you can't play sports bets across state lines.
Okay. Well, here's a question for you. I mean, because you're deep in this. You've always been. This is your background. This is what you built your business on. Are we actually getting more people who are betting on sports, or is what happened, we're just capturing a more legal form? Because I know that, people bet currently on esports, not in a legal fashion, obviously, but yet they do, even here in the US, on themselves, on their friends, or whatever it is, however they do it. That exists. So the point is that why sidestep it? And I know that in sports for sure. I mean, the bookies must be. I mean, the non-legal places are. This was like a crumble event for them, obviously, as we roll out these legal forms of sports betting. What's the real percentage? Just I'm not going to hold you to it, but like, sort of off the top of your head, that just converted these people who were, having to hand over an envelope to somebody, as opposed to going online and, a legitimate sports book in comparison. I mean, have we really done that? Or is it, I mean, New Jersey is a perfect example. I mean, I grew up there, so, all kinds of stuff went on, but I when I look at it and they brag about their numbers, in that, to me, it's like, great. Now now it's legalized. I mean, what portion above that is really, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, it's a great question and great thoughts as well. It's hard to peg an exact number to what's happened, but let me tell you what we've seen and what we know. We do know that obviously the marketplace is growing enormously. Even New Jersey opening up has not hurt Nevada. Nevada grew too, right? So the marketplace is growing in general, right? Awareness of sports betting is what's growing the marketplace, right? I mean, it's like sports betting was, I've been doing this a long time, as you mentioned, well into, well over 3 decades now. We've never seen growth spurts like this in sports betting. We always hoped about it, we always talked about it, but it's great to see it, right? Yeah. So it's coming from a couple different areas, and I think it's coming from, one, awareness of all the sports betting. Everybody's talking about sports betting right now. It was never really talked about before, right? It was like, right, sports betting was relegated to your neighborhood bookie, or it was Las Vegas, right? It was the two things people talked about. It was never like, sports betting is legal. It's in the news everywhere. It's on CNN. It's made everything. New Jersey did an amazing job of going live and bringing in a lot of operators that made a lot of press and a lot of attention and awareness towards sports betting, which created a marketplace within the United States. And then, of course, everybody wants convenience. So for the bookmaker himself who was betting offshore, I believe we won back a fair amount of that business. Will we win it all back 100%? Probably not, because they're shopping lines, right? Or they're out there, they're the sharp guys, and a lot of people don't want to have sharp guys anyway. With large bet limits, that they have a lot of information, that are taking a lot more risk than others, and offshore books, they have some advantages to the fact they offer credit. They they don't necessarily follow all the regulations that a lot of people will have to, for instance, in Pennsylvania, nor do they have to pay the extensive high tax rates. So they can be a lot more flexible in the pricing of their lines. So will offshore market go away entirely? No, but I feel that with convenience, and we've gained a lot of market share back into the States. And plus, a lot of the bookies themselves want to be able to bet right in their backyard and be able to say that they're, they've got a home
Ah, good.
now.
Good info. Listen, we got to wrap it up here. I just wanted to thank you so much
Yeah.
for participating in this online piece. We're going to be doing more. We have a few announcements that are coming up a couple of weeks down the road, but we're going to keep you and everybody else who's interested in what we're doing engaged. So I look forward to actually physically seeing you in
Yeah.
public, in September. We'll see how it pans out. For now, we've dug our feet in the ground, and we may be the only event in 2020, but
Yeah, well, likewise, Ben. You and Ari have done a great job. So cheers to you guys. Thanks to Allegra and everybody for putting this together. And yeah, hopefully we'll all be together in person,
Yeah.
and we'll be able to all enjoy our company together. But for the most part, if you need anything at all, just let me know. I'm available, and I look forward to the conference.
Fantastic. Have a
Okay.
good one, John. Thank you very much.
Take care, Ben.
Take
Bye.
care.